Welcome back to Man Down Sports. As you can see from the thumbnail, ESPN got a little bit heated this morning. Kendrick Perkins and Redick going at it once again. They've been going back in since last week on this Nikola Jokic narrative about his MVP race and it being a long shot for anybody else to win it other than Nikola Jokic. They're basically saying Nikola Jokic is running away with the MVP. And Kendrick Perkins gave a little bit of pushback last week on that narrative. And then he cited, some things that kind of, pretty much accuse people of being biased as far as how they vote for white athletes in the NBA when it comes to the MVP. And Redick has been annoyed ever since Kendrick Perkins ever said that, and a lot of other sports pundits and a lot of either YouTube creators came out and support or against that narrative that Kendrick Perkins tried to put out there. And they're misunderstanding what Kendrick Perkins is trying to say. And he's not a very articulate individual. So when it comes to Redick pressing him a little bit on this episode and previous episodes, he can't come out and really defend his position well enough because for one, he's not articulating it in the best way where it's understood by everyone in the beginning. And then it gets even worse once you press him on it and he kind of has to go off script to defend his position. And it's really an unfair fight with someone as articulate as Redick when you're going head to head with Kendrick Perkins, man. So it was a really heated exchange. It was kind of funny. I'm gonna play it for you. Before I hit that button to play the audio, make sure you subscribe to Man Down Sports on YouTube. Make sure you're checking us out on all streaming platforms that have podcasts for the audio version as well. And definitely hit that thumbs up and share this episode. So I'm gonna play what Kendrick Perkins. Well, first I'm gonna play what Redick had to say, and then there's also a clip of what Kendrick Perkins said. And I'm gonna try to decipher this and kind of explain it because I don't think Kendrick Perkins does a good enough job to really articulate. So let's hear what I'm gonna pause it in between it. So let's hear what Redick had to say.
Look, Perk, I want to touch on something that they didn't bring up. This idea that Dirk and Steve Nash were favored to win the MVP because they're white. First of all, you stop short at 1990. That was your cutoff point for players to win MVP not in the top 10 in points per game, which is a stupid stat to judge MVP on. This isn't middle school. 1990, Magic won it. In 89, Magic won it. 87, Magic won it. 87, he was 10th. 89, he was 15th. 90, he was 18th.
Oh. All right, so that's all good points by Redick. So if you didn't hear what Kendrick Perkins said last week, basically what he was saying is, if you really look at it, since 1990, there hasn't been an MVP that has won it and not been in the top 10 in scoring, except for Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, and Nikola Jokic. So I guess what Kendrick Perkins really threw that stat out there for, which is probably something he didn't look up. It was probably someone that works for ESPN as his statistician that probably looked it up and was like, hey, here's a good point to make. What I think Kendrick Perkins is trying to say is when we look for MVPs and when the voters are voting for them, they're usually voting for the guys who's leading their team based on how much scoring he's doing. If he's an unstoppable scorer, and that's what superstars really are. They put the ball in the basket, right? Most 9 times out of 10, the superstar is putting the ball in the basket, and every now and then you have a sprinkle of Magic Johnson who specialize in finding guys to put the ball in the basket. J. Kidd, John Stockton, guys. Those are 3 main guys that. My specialty is finding the scores. And every time you have a guy like that, you have to pair him with an unstoppable scorer. Magic Johnson, great passer. You had Kareem, who was until this year the #1 all-time leader in scoring. So he is playing with an unstoppable scorer. Not to mention James Worthy was no slouch, and then they had scores all over the bench. Byron Scott is a shooter. I can't even begin to think of all the names, but it's an extensive list of guys that could score. And then when you look at Nash, he had Amari Stoudemire put that ball in the hole. And when you look at John Stockton, he had Karl Malone. So You have to pair a guy like that, right? So what Kendrick Perkins can't really dissect is that there is a formula where you can be a guy that wins MVPs and be valuable when you're primarily a passer. But in those cases, the person that was primarily the passer was not also primarily the scorer for their team. And that's the difference when you look at that. And that's when it's connected to padding your stats, because it doesn't make a lot of basketball sense if you don't have to. Like if you have other options on the team, like the Denver Nuggets do, they have a unstoppable scorer in Michael Porter Jr. He can score off the ball. He can catch and shoot. He can score coming off screens. He can score in the post. He can score on the break. He can score with the ball in his hand. He can score in ISO situations, mid post, low post, high post. Michael Porter Jr. is a dominant scorer. The only issue we have with Michael Porter Jr. is he going to play without getting hurt? He's an unreal scorer. He should be one of the guys mentioned in the breast with the guys that's 23 and under or 25 and under. His name should be mentioned, but they have him in a role where he's basically just doing what Klay Thompson's doing. He's catching and shooting at 6'11". He has a mismatch when he get the ball as well. I would exploit that. Mike Malone doesn't seem to want to exploit that. We see how good Bol is playing in Orlando. He was a mismatch if he would have played him. He had Bol for almost 3 years, barely get off the bench, right? So you can tell what Mike Malone emphasis is when it comes to the offensive end of the ball. It's Jokic, and then number 2 is going to be Jamal Murray, because that's an unstoppable score as well. So my point is, when you have options, it doesn't make sense to consolidate those 2 main roles of primary scorer and primary facilitator into one guy. And when you do that, it does look like you're trying to help his stats, and that's when it becomes stat padding. And Kendrick Perkins couldn't really articulate that. And let's give an example. Primary scorer, primary facilitator at the same time, Luka Doncic. Ever since he's been in Dallas, he's been the primary scorer and the primary facilitator. Has it worked? No. Did he get lucky and beat Phoenix last year? Yeah, they got a lot of help doing that. But it's not an appetite for success long term or in a long playoff battle, right? A team that's not playing like that usually overcomes a team who's relying on one guy to do those 2 main roles on offense. Russell Westbrook with OKC Thunder, primary scorer, over 20 a game, primary assist guy, over 10 a game. James Harden, Houston Rockets, primary scorer, primary facilitator, right? So you're basically creating an offense where one guy has the option whether he wants to score or if he want to get somebody involved, and it's everyone depending on him to get them involved. You know, they use Jokic like a point forward. He brings the ball up on fast breaks, and he can pass. He can do all of this stuff, but he's not the only big that's been able to pass that well. Vlade Divac could pass that well. Chris Webber could pass that well. They both got a lot of assists out of the high post and the low post when they was in Sacramento. Arvydas Sabonis as well. They're great passers, right? But to say, hey, I want my 7-footer to bring the ball up court and find shooters, and you're going to tell your point guard, who's Jamal Murray, I'd rather Jokic get the assist than you. I mean, you might, if you're a scorer like Jamal Murray and you just want to shoot the ball, you might like that. But he's a very capable point guard who should be the one. If Jokic is the primary scorer, then why can't Jamal Murray be the primary facilitator, right? And you know, you got 2 roles and 2 guys instead of 2 roles and 1 guy. So anyway, I say all that to say this. That's what Kendrick is not being able to get out and articulate. He's saying it looks like he's stat padding if you're going to play him in that way, especially when you don't have to. And just to put the nail in the coffin, Jamal Murray is averaging about 6 assists this year. He's up. He's usually averaging 5. He's up from 4.8 to 6, right? So he went up. Jokic went from 7 to 10. He was averaging 7 assists last year. Won the MVP last year, averaging 7 assists. Now he's up to 10. right? So they're both up, but Michael Porter Jr. is healthy, and he's a guy, like I said, he's been used as just a shooter. They're treating him like Kyle Korver. They're not even treating him like Klay, because Klay at least get plays called for him, and he's coming off screens. Like, he's really just in the corner waiting for a catch and shoot from Jokic, right? So he don't get plays called for him really. So he's like Kyle Korver. They're using him just like a shooter. The only thing you can do is shoot, even though you're 6'11" and you can post anybody up and get a bucket and you can handle the ball. He's averaging 1 assist. Like, he has almost zero opportunity to make a play for himself or others. He's literally a catch and shoot player. That's it. Averaging 1 assist. So my thoughts is, if Jokic, okay, last year he didn't have Michael Porter Jr. or Jamal Murray. They both was hurt. It would have made sense for him to be trying to get more assists last year. He took more shots last year. He's taking less shots now and distributing more. What if I was the coach, what I would want to find Michael Porter Jr. distributing more and trying to make plays to take some load off of Jokic. But they don't want to load off Jokic. They want to go through Jokic that much, right? But the last 3 or 4 years, it's not been working out in the playoffs. They've been getting put out of the playoffs. Once you neutralize Jokic, it's over. They don't have a plan B, because you got 2 roles and 1 guy, right? One thing he's probably not going to do in the playoffs is average a triple-double, right? So why set your team up during the regular season to operate a certain way that you know is not going to really work in the playoffs? I would want the next step to be made for my basketball team is for Michael Porter Jr. to become an all-star. That's how you're going to get the most help. And imagine if the Lakers held Kobe back and said, no, we're going to let Shaq do almost everything, right? We're even going to give the ball to Shaq up top at the top of the key and make plays. And Kobe, only thing you're going to do is be a stretch, 3-point shoot, stretch the floor, and catch and shoot. What if they traded Kobe like Michael Porter Jr.? You never got to see Kobe go one-on-one in any ISO situation or take over a game. None of that. That's how they're doing Michael Porter Jr. I want to see Michael Porter Jr. take that next step up versus Jokic go from 7 to 10 assists, and it looked very good on the stats. But that's just me. Here's more of JJ Redick.
Okay. We judge MVP year to year. You also said the criteria or the goalposts change year to year for certain players. No, it doesn't. We vote on the MVP. Hold on. We vote on the MVP based on that season. We vote on the MVP based on that season.
So he just contradicted himself. He said Kendrick Perkins claimed that the criteria changes too much, which is true. Because there's no criteria, it's fluent, right? So whoever you vote for the MVP this year, you could be like, we'll vote it because he did X, Y, and Z, and you'd be like, well, what about when so and so did X, Y, and Z last year, and y'all didn't vote for him, right? So the criteria does change every year, but JJ Redick seems to say that the criteria doesn't change. He said the criteria doesn't change, and then he said right after that in the same sentence that we vote on the MVP every year, and if it's a different year, then it's a different criteria. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah, what we voted on last year is different than what we voted on this year. So there's no criteria, and that's the main problem. You won't even have these situations where people are calling people out based on bias if there was a criteria, because now we can look at it and we can pretty much know by the criteria who should be getting the votes. But there's no criteria, so everyone who has a vote is going by a different criteria in their head, unless they all congregate and get together, which I don't think they're supposed to be doing, and then they decide amongst a group of them, this is who we're voting for, which is probably what has happened.
It is a regular season award. Previous playoff runs have nothing to do with it. It's a regular season award for the most valuable player. And we can measure that, Perk. So maybe voters have gotten smarter. I want to talk about Dirk and Nash real quick, and I'll let you jump in. Dirk Nowitzki led the league in win shares in both 06 and 07. Led the league in offensive win shares in both 06 and 07. So yeah, he wasn't top 5 or whatever he was, top 10 in scoring his MVP season. The Dallas Mavericks were 67-15. They had the best record in the NBA. In 05, Steve Nash was the driver of the number one offense in the league, a team that jumped 20 wins and had the best record in the NBA. Okay. In 06 to me is one of the weirdest MVP seasons ever. You could make an argument Nash probably shouldn't have won it, but he was still the driver of the number one offense in the league. The two best teams that year, the Detroit Pistons, 64 wins, the San Antonio Spurs, 63 wins. Guess what? They didn't have their top scorers weren't in the top 20 in the NBA that year. So that was just a strange thing. You could have given it to Kobe. You could have given it to Shaq. You could have given it to Tim Duncan. They gave it to Steve Nash. It's not because he was white.
It was.
All right. So that's all of JJ Redick. And he was making points of when Dirk won it and then Nash won back-to-back in 05 and 06. He said Dirk absolutely deserved it. They had the best record in the league that year, and Dirk was playing lights out. I agree 100%. Dirk Nowitzki deserved that MVP. Dirk played lights out. Dirk probably deserved more than one MVP. Dirk was unreal in his prime. Love him to death, right? So he's absolutely right about Dirk's MVP. So no, I don't agree that voters voted for Dirk just because he was white. Dirk deserved that MVP. All right. Now, the 05 and 06 back-to-back MVPs with Steve Nash. I have to refresh my memories 100% with it, but I do remember one year was the year that the conversation was, we had Chauncey Billups in the conversation, we had Nash in the conversation, we had Kobe in the conversation. And I do remember they split it up by saying this was the narrative that was being created in the media. They said that Detroit had too much help, and Chauncey Billups had too much help in Detroit. They said he had Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton. They said that team is too complete and he has too much help, so we can't give it to Billups. That year, Billups, he took that name, Big Shot. What was they calling him? No, that was Robert Ory. They was calling him Big Shot. Billups, they was calling I can't remember what his name was, but pretty much what you see in Dame Lillard with Dame time, Billups was doing it. Clutch shot after clutch shot, game winning shot after game winning shot. Like he was hitting big shots, man. That like he was really driving that Detroit offense and defense. So you got a player on offense and defense contributing at a high level. And if you one of the leaders of a defense that was legendary, right? They held people to like 75 points and less multiple times during that season, right? That defense was legendary. And of course, the anchor, especially on the front line, was the Wallace brothers. But on the perimeter, that tone was set by Chauncey Billups. And then he did the same thing on the offensive end. And he took all the big shots. So while he didn't explode for a lot of points and average 30 or 28 or 25, right? He was absolutely the leading scorer on that team and one of the catalysts on the defensive end. So my criteria, and then they had the best record in the league with 64 wins. So my criteria for MVPs is, yes, I want to see your team succeed. I want team success. I want you to have a phenomenal year, and I want you to be valuable on both ends of the floor. And that's who would get my vote, right? I would vote over the guy that's elite on both ends of the floor and have the team success and have the accolades to show for it statistically, over the guy who just has the accolades to show for it offensively and they're elite offensively, but like Steve Nash case, not even average defensively and didn't contribute. And even though his offense in Phoenix was legendary and they were scoring phenomenal points, their defense might have been below the bottom that season. And pretty much the whole time he was in Phoenix. That's how D'Antoni got his name Antony, because there's no D in his name, right? His teams don't play D. Same thing when he went to Houston with James Harden. The teams just don't play D, right? So how can you go all offense, zero defense versus offense and defense plus the best record in the league? That's beyond me. So yes, Steve Nash 100% didn't deserve that 06 MVP. The 05 you can debate. So to get to what Kendrick Perkins and JJ Redick was talking about, then what was the motivation to vote for a guy based on what we seen in 05 and 06, and then just go past Chauncey Billups, go past Tim Duncan, go past Kobe Bryant, right? You know, Kobe Bryant your record's not good enough, even though your stats was through the roof. Record wasn't good enough. They made the playoffs, but they only won 42 games. Chauncey Billups and Tim Duncan, their team was too good. And it was like, well, Steve Nash, hey, man, he does everything for them on offense. He's got these crazy assist number stats, 50, 40, 90. The offense is legendary. And they said this is the red flag. Anytime you hear teammates getting put down and teammates getting called not good or average, anytime you hear that, that's a red flag that they're trying to cook the books and get and give someone an award that they probably don't deserve. You never when you think about great players, you've never heard a great player get his team and his teammates trashed and diminished to make him look better, except when it came to giving someone something they shouldn't deserve. Like when they tried to give LeBron James the finals MVP. They said he deserved it because his numbers was great. Even though he got swept, his team was trash. He was playing with bombs and blah, 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 this and that, right? Well, the same thing they said about Steve Nash, which we know in hindsight was not true because they was trying to make it seem like Amari Stoudemire only getting 20 and 10 because Nash is passing him the ball. Amari Stoudemire was a daggone great player, right? That Q Richardson was leading the league in 3-point percentage that year. Sean Marion was an all-star. We later seen him go and win the finals with Dirk. Like this is the stuff they was doing. They had Sean Marion, Amari Stoudemire, Q Richardson, and some other people I can't remember. Barbosa was coming off the bench. They said everybody on that team was trash. And that's why Nash should get the MVP. So anyway, I say all that to say this. Kendrick has a point. So if Nash didn't deserve it, why did he get it? And I just want to say this one thing before I play what Kendrick Perkins said. I just want to say this one thing. We know that there's bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious bias. We all have it, right? We all have unconscious bias. Some of us are biased and we know we're biased. Some of us are biased and we don't know it. All right. That's what unconscious bias is. If you really take a poll and you ask people why they voted for President Obama, yes, he was qualified. Yes, people thought that he would be a good president, but you can't lie and say the fact that he was a black man, that your unconscious bias didn't kick in just a little bit on both ends of it. There's people who probably didn't vote for Obama because he was black, and there's probably people who voted for him because he was black, right? Some didn't vote because he was black. Some did vote because he was black. Whether they know that there was bias about it or not, it happened, right? So for JJ Redick to act like that none of that plays a factor when you have a sport like the basketball NBA dominated, and which is probably, I don't know, 75%, 85% black athletes playing in the NBA, right? Every year you're going to see black players get the MVP. You know what I'm saying? It's just going to be back to back, black players. So every now and then there's an opportunity to go against that. Where you have a phenomenal year from Dirk, a phenomenal year from Steve Nash, a phenomenal year from Jokic. Those are few and far between, right? They don't happen that often. So when it does happen, hey, maybe I should make a case for this guy. It's good for the sport. It really is. So are people really conscious and thinking about that, or is that something that's subconscious that's going on and swaying how they vote? All right, I'm gonna play something that Kendrick Perkins said, then I'm in this video with my comments.
So let him speak.
He's the most valuable player.
They made the playoffs with that roster. You take Kobe off that team, they probably win 8 games. Okay, so let's make that very, very clear. Now, since you want to talk about when I was saying and preaching about moving the goalposts, the reason I asked that question was for the simple fact that what I'm saying is I don't know the criteria no more.
That's a good point. What is the criteria?
I don't know if it's because it's the number 1 seed. I don't know if it's the number 6 seed. I don't know how you judging it. Is we judging off of advanced stats or who's the most valuable player? You take them off this team. We don't know. We don't know, but we do know this. Since you do want to bring it up, we do know this, that when it comes to MVP voting, 80% of the voters are white American. 20% are others.
And there it is. That is the elephant in the room that nobody want to address. What you're going to see a lot from people is the fact that Perkins can't articulate himself that well and really say exactly what he's trying to say and argue his position. And JJ Redick is really good at that. So what we see on the surface is JJ Redick really destroyed Kendrick Perkins in this debate. But the elephant in the room that no one is going to clip and talk about is what Kendrick Perkins just said. Out of all the media members who have a vote for the MVP and probably the other awards as well, out of all the media members who have a vote, 80% of them are white Americans. He said 20% is other, not black. 20% is not black. 20% is other. That means black, Asian, and every other race you want to bring in there, right? So other, 20% are the minority, 80% of the majority, 80%. You mean to tell me you don't think that 80% out of 80% of all the voters, you don't think unconscious or conscious bias is playing any role in how they vote? I don't think that you can actually honestly say that, but I want y'all to leave y'all comments in the comment section and tell me what y'all think. Out of 80% of those voters, if they're all white, first of all, why is 80%? Why is 80% white? All right. Why not 50-50? Why, why not have it more inclusive? Right. And I'm pretty sure it's mostly white male at that. So you got to think psychology on this. You got to think psychological, right? People don't know what they don't know. So if you're biased unconsciously and you're not aware of it, you could very well see this opportunity. Oh man, it's an opportunity for us to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going with who looks like me. It happens all the time, and there's nothing wrong with pointing it out. I appreciate Kendrick Perkins for pointing it out. He might not be the right person to say it because, his challenges as far as how he speak and especially when he's being challenged. He can't seem to get his thoughts and his words out. He's talking 100 miles per hour and he's stuttering and he's pausing and, it just is what it is with Kendrick Perkins. But you can't act like this, that he's not making a valid point when it comes to unconscious bias. But that's what I'm gonna say, man. Do you think any of that plays a part, and why is it a 80% 20% split for all the people who have a vote? All right, I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.